And what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Ball Up Top, a women's basketball podcast presented by No Cap Space, WBB. Andrew, Tyler, with you. It's super secret white guy chat on Ball Up Top this week.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord.
I know. Shawnee will be so proud.
Yes.
Anytime.
Welcome back, Andrew.
So for people that are not in our 5-person No Cap Space group chat, anytime Tyler and I talk about something content related, and then it comes into the group chat later, Shawnee's like, oh, word, okay, so y'all were in super secret white guy chat. And now here we are, super secret white guy chat, manifest. And who else do you want to hear talk about this Time Magazine discourse than two white
guys, baby. Let's go. Yippee. I'm so excited. Yay, more discourse. Yay.
Let's lay the groundwork before we jump into this. So A'ja Wilson wins Times Athlete of the Year. Sean Gregory writes a long feature about the Las Vegas Aces forward, her MVP season, the pettiness that fuels her, a little touch on some of the history that has gotten her to this point, and why it is so important that she received this honor this year in a season where I would say a GOAT argument has more or less been cemented here. There are debates people can have about A'ja versus Coop, A'ja versus Swoops, A'ja versus Lauren Jackson or DT or Lisa, but I think you can make the argument best player of this era so far and counting, and by the time the career is over, there probably will be less of, if any, argument at all that she is the undisputed GOAT. Like, I don't think anyone will have that candle until someone tries to come and compete with her longevity. But it wasn't the award. It wasn't the honor. People got some Sheila Johnson jokes off, which I thought was kind of funny, but it centered around a particular excerpt from the article. I feel like we got to talk about it. We got to lead it off. Tyler, run us through the quote, read the excerpt, and then I will hit the ISO, and then we will put this in the ground and talk real basketball.
Yeah. Just when we thought, I feel like every time, it almost feels like we're in the clear. We get a Caitlin Clark fan base boost topic and discourse that fires up, and I'm so exhausted. I'm gonna read. I want to preface one thing here before we kind of dive into this, because Andrew, I think you've had phenomenal points about why the storytelling specifically with A'ja is so important, and this is what's so frustrating about it is that like the story is there to be told. The hero's journey is there to be told, and I hate that this is what got stuck up on, and for various reasons that like you could say that it got stuck up on, and it's probably different reasons for different people and whatnot. But the fact that this is what we're leaving with, and like we have to talk about it because this is what the discourse is, and like naturally this is what's gonna happen. But here's the paragraph, and you let me know if you want me to stop at any point of this. Her rocket ship runs comes at an opportune time. In 2024, Caitlin Clark's rookie season helped the WNBA hit milestone TV and attendance figures, but Clark's emergence created a toxic, racially divisive narrative that she was almost singularly responsible for salvaging a league whose foundation has been built by a mostly black player base. This storyline bothered Wilson, who in 2024 earned her third WNBA MVP and her second Olympic gold medal in Paris, where she was named tournament MVP. This is a quote here from A'ja. "It wasn't a hit at me because I'm going to do me regardless," she says. "I'm going to win this MVP. I'll win a gold medal. Y'all can't shake my resume. It was more so, let's not lose the recipe. Let's not lose the history. It was erased for a minute, and I don't like that because we have tons of women that have been through the grimiest of grimy things to get the league where it is today." And that is the initial paragraph. Do we want to stop there? We have the second one as well.
Let's stop right there, because I think that's the only one that's really worth discussing here. Because I think a lot of the other stuff is frankly overblown.
It's a lot of proof of the pudding, essentially, that like the WNBA was fine without Clark. To summarize essentially anything else that was said about Caitlin in this, but I will lob it up to you.
Here's my issue with this. Without seeing the interview transcript, it's impossible to know if the question actually revolved around Caitlin Clark or not. And that's where I think people need to be willing to give A'ja Wilson a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, because read the front end of the quote again, like the first sentence for A'ja's quote.
"It wasn't a hit at me because I'm going to do me regardless."
Okay. What was the hit? You know, Like, are you telling us as the writer that the hit was this notion that the WNBA was not successful until Caitlin Clark came around? If so, I would have preferred that that be a little more explicitly stated. Because what it reads to me is the writer is implanting their beliefs on what 2023 was and finding a way to work in Asia's quote. And to pull the veil back on how some of this stuff works. Time Magazine is not Sports Illustrated. Time Magazine is not ESPN. They are not built for an audience that are primarily sports fans. And I can tell you firsthand, as someone who has worked in local TV, when you are a sports person trying to talk to the news division or a producer who is not a sports fan, they are going to find the thing that matches what people know or are aware of that are not sports fans. And that can piss off a lot of sports writers and sports reporters in TV, because it's like, why do you need to shoehorn this in just to, draw some type of contextual familiarity for the audience that might not know Asia Wilson as well as they know Caitlin Clark? Yeah. And to me, that is the issue with this. It's less Asia's quote, which in a vacuum isn't a bad quote. Asia's quote in a vacuum is, there's a lot of new people that came to this game, and we can't forget who came first to build it. And that's something that is a mission statement of ours. Yeah, we hold 100%. That true. We're glad that there are Caitlin Clark fans in the league. We are glad you are here. We are glad for the discourse that many of you have brought. Some of you, Dave Portnoy, we do not like what you have brought, but like a very great many of Caitlin Clark fans are earnest basketball fans that just want to be a part of the experience. And I can understand if you are a longtime player, or if you're people like us who have been covering the game for a long time. I've been in this for over 10 years now. Like, I get the frustration of feeling like this is nothing existed or nothing was good before X player burst onto the scene. With that said, I do think there are more tactful ways to handle that quote, because at this point, it read like people are looking for Asia Wilson to have quotes like this. And I understand the unapologetic nature of things. I understand the desire to not feel like you need to tailor yourself to an audience that is probably not going to accept you anyway. I get that. And I think that Asia and her team are very aware of that and kind of move accordingly. And I respect the hell out of it. At the same time, if you want to position yourself as like a global ambassador for the game, as the elder stateswoman who is the undisputed GOAT of this game, I do think there are some aspects of heavy is the head that wears the crown, like where you want the pettiness, you want the Jordan-esque nature of rubbing your enemies' noses in it. At the same time, I think the sport is just, first of all, I think it's a fundamentally different sport than basketball, but I also think the sport's in a very different place than it was when Michael Jordan or even a LeBron James came in, right? And not to mention, Jordan and LeBron, they are unabashed haters of the people that they don't like, but they 100%. Also are very effusive in their praise of others. And to me, some of the dichotomy that I've had to wrestle with today is the print article kind of having that quote and the quote about the season after Caitlin got hurt and saying, this is a great league. There's a lot of great people in here regardless. And then when you go to the video companion portion of the Time story, it's like, who's the best player not named Asia Wilson? It's like, it's Asia Wilson. And while that is endearing and funny and kind of like a one-off quip, it's hard to not see those two things in tandem and say, well, which is it here? Is this, this is a great league that's more than one person? Or is this the one person should be you instead? And I don't blame Asia for having that opinion if that's what she does have. I think I place more blame on the writer, and I place more blame on her team for not catching that and having that idea about how that could be misconstrued a little bit earlier in the editorial process. we're journalists. I would never advocate for an agency to have final cut on a story, but we know how this game is played. And typically, athlete of the year stories do have some degree of understanding about what's being written 100%. And how it's going to go out. Mm-hmm. So I wish that had been a little bit more thought through. But I also think that if Caitlin Clark fans in particular want A'ja Wilson to get over 2023, y'all need to get over it too. Because we're going into 2026. And if, the season is getting to its next place, if you want this woman to, leave the past in the past, then y'all got to stop cherry picking these quotes and doing the same shit. Because all it's doing is creating a feedback loop where the fans react to something, then A'ja says something about how the fans react, and then the fans react to what A'ja says, and we just keep doing this. And the year is going to be 2040, and the city of Miami will be falling into the fucking Atlantic Ocean. It'll be 10,000 years away to the 99th degree, and the heat death of the universe is happening, and we're still going to be doing the stands. And I think I don't know who I think needs to be the person to blink first. I think if y'all blinked at the same time as fan bases, that would be lovely. But we have to leave this shit in 2023, man. Caitlin Clark has not played meaningful basketball in 6 months. Why is a reporter even bringing that up when this is A'ja Wilson's moment? To me, it cheapens the story, because the story is about how A'ja Wilson rose from a player, a young girl in Colombia who didn't actually like basketball all that much, to suffering panic attacks after losing the finals in 2020, to becoming the greatest player in the world. That is the story. The story is not how Caitlin Clark relates to this. And I think anytime writers try to shoehorn this stuff in, it does a disservice to the players that we're supposed to be talking about here. And so, while I think A'ja Wilson is a woman and has all of the right to, smite her enemies or lean into the pettiness of all of it, I do think she gets served up bait a lot, and she takes the bait a lot. And I don't, have an opinion on whether or not she should take it, because I don't think that's my place. I'm not on the other side of the racist invective from fans. I'm not on the other side of the haters. I'm not on the other side of the doubters and the pettiness and media people like us talking about whether or not this is a regression season for her. So I don't know how that shit would affect me. It would probably piss me off too, because I am also, I have pettiness in that end as well. But I also know that this is a scenario in which, she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. But I think the issue falls less with her than it does publications and writers and media trying to find a way to shoehorn Caitlin Clark's name into these discussions, because what you are tacitly admitting is that you feel like there's another person in this equation that has to stand as A'ja Wilson's foil, and the person that is actually A'ja Wilson's foil is Breanna Stewart. It's not Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's foils are Angel Reese and Paige Beckers, and we need to do a better job of stacking these things from an era perspective, because when, it was the, I'm trying to think about ages and times, right? I don't think Tim Duncan was LeBron's contemporary. I think Tim Duncan and Kobe were contemporaries because they were around the same era. LeBron's contemporary, has been Steph as they've gotten older together, or Kevin Durant for that matter. But I don't think Kobe and I never saw a rivalry between those two players, because to me, they were two totally different players generationally. And A'ja and Caitlin are two different generational players straddling two different eras with two different sets of accolades. And we got to let Caitlin's story bear itself out before we start to make decisions about whether or not it impugns upon A'ja's GOAT case. A'ja now is the undisputed best player in the world. We can have an argument about motion and aura and all this other nebulous crap that nobody can actually quantify from a qualitative perspective. But I think the fact that we keep putting it into stories that are designed to celebrate an individual that isn't Caitlin Clark is a failure of the writers and the publication and the media. And they're the ones that force us to spend the first 15 minutes talking about this podcast in that respect. So any final thoughts? I mean, I want to leave this in 2023. Yeah, and we're this is year 3. I'm tired. A'ja Wilson's about to be 30. Enough.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is, I mean, as I echo a lot of what you said, in the sense of this is such a good story. This is we just saw like the story of A'ja Wilson, from whether you're taking it from, you can take it from the first day she picked up a basketball, before that even, you could take it from the start of this season. Like, and we just saw the Aces have one of the most incredible comeback seasons we've ever seen, and then A'ja Wilson just turned into Thanos and just like there's nothing you could do about it. Like there's so many points you could stop this at, like where like you can mark this story and it be a phenomenal story of a genuine like hero's journey that we think of in the way of a player crescendoing into a GOAT. And I hate like just from a media perspective, from a WNBA fan perspective, I hate that these are things that we're talking about, because we should be lore building right now. Like these should be like the stories that we could go and be like, hey, my grandkids grow up and I talk about A'ja Wilson, like this should be the story I'm able to go and look at and be like, yeah, she was Time Player of the Year, and this is what she had accomplished up to that point, and there was still X, Y, and Z to come. We're not getting that here, and we're not getting that in the discussion afterwards. We're not getting that in the print itself, and to me, that's what I leave most disappointed by, is that we have a GOAT on our hands, like at this moment in time in women's basketball, and we are just like, whether it's the media as a whole or this article just dumbed down into one, it's not good enough, frankly. It's not good enough.
And my last thought on this is twofold. First and foremost, I don't even think the rise of the sport needed to reference Caitlin specifically, because
I agree.
What we're talking about when we are talking about the growth of the league and a recognition of the history of the league isn't actually restricted just to Caitlin. It's Caitlin, it's Angel, it's Paige, it's the entire NIL era of superstars that are entering the league with a different type of public profile than people like A'ja and Stewie came into. And I think the thing that isn't litigated out in these stories is that it is completely okay for a player that's older and missed out on the NIL era to resent this a little bit.
Absolutely. Can you imagine like Skylar in the NIL era?
Bro, like A'ja Wilson as a top 3 player out of high school that bucks the traditional powers of women's basketball to go to South Carolina and win a title there. Bro. Like the NIL bag and the following that she would carry into the league is massive. And if you talk to a lot of these players, man, like I know everyone uses the argument of like, oh, well, Cheryl Miller, doesn't feel this way, and all these other people. I've talked to some of these GOATs for the Legendarium, guys, and I'm looking into the camera to tell you this straight up. They might feel better about this now. You should have caught them when they were 30 and asked how they felt then, because a lot of them would tell you it took them a while to come around to the idea of like, yeah, I didn't get this, but like I'm cool with them getting it now. That is the type of wisdom that comes with age. And when you are in your, in your 20s and early into your 30s, in this society, we're still playing the comparison game. Social media has done that to us. If you're a millennial and down, you play the comparison game on social media. And so I don't blame someone for feeling a little bit resentful of it. Now, that is something that did not require the Caitlin angle. That was a totally different NIL angle that writer could have taken to say the same exact thing without making it about Caitlin Clark. And that's the issue that I have with it, is this type of stuff could have been avoided. Now let's talk about actual basketball, because we got actual basketball happening. Some great matchups in this past week. Some great college matchups coming up this week. The biggest of which, the Cy-Hawk battle between Iowa and Iowa State. Audie Crooks has had 2 games over 40-plus points so far this year. She has, I would argue, vaulted herself right to the top of the ladder in the Player of the Year Wooden Award, Naismith Award honors, for adjudicating top threes. She's right in that mix. On the other side, you've got Iowa. You've got Ava Hayden. You've got an Iowa team that is playing through their bigs for the first time since, I would really argue, Megan Gustafson.
Meg Gustafson, for sure, yeah.
And I think this is going to be one of the funner Cy-Hawk matchups we've had since maybe like 2021, when it was like Jones and Donarski against Zanano and Clark. Like, where do you stand on this?
I am stoked, because first off, I love this is potentially like my favorite game of women's basketball. And let me tell you, the reason why is that so many of the rivalries in women's basketball are based off prestige. It's pretty much UConn and whatever team was trying to beat UConn at the time, whether it be Notre Dame or Tennessee. And you have this level of hate that is fostered through that. This is real deal college sports in-state rivalry. And I love it. Like we've talked to like, we've talked to like Jan Jensen, for example. We've heard women's basketball like means more in Iowa, like through and through before Caitlin, and Caitlin then amplified it to a whole different degree that was never even imaginable. This rivalry is fantastic. You have two of the best fan bases in the country. I remember when I was going up to all the Big 12 championships and like the tournaments in Kansas City and everything, it would just be Iowa State fans just packing it out. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. And I'm so excited. Like this game, and this is such an interesting one, just to your point, like this is not your Iowa of Caitlin Clark era. This is an Iowa that plays defense and like the foundation is defense in that way. Their foundation is their bigs, and it's turned out to be a bit more Ava Hayden than it has been maybe Hannah Stokey, like we projected, you know, and kind of having Stokey being in that number one position, who is a player that I'm really eyeing, that I would love to kind of see turn up in this game and like kind of announce herself as a number one option. But just to kind of keep talking generally, like this is a game that I completely agree. Like it's different in terms of like Iowa's like star power, but I'm very excited for this game because you mentioned Audi Crooks, who has just been on a ridiculous tear, but hasn't had a big that's really been able to match up with her until now. Like just from a pure like size to size, like and Iowa has that, and Iowa also has the defense that can disrupt very easily, and I'm intrigued what that looks like for Iowa State, who doesn't have knockdown 3-point shooting like maybe you've kind of grown accustomed to at times with Iowa State in the past. We look back at, you know, the past 5 to 10 years of this matchup. So this is a very different brand of this game. And the thing that stays the same is the rivalry. And I love that because this is real deal hate. And that's before even adding in the stakes that both these teams are undefeated. Whoever wins this game is going to jump up into the top 10 and like be there solidly. Like the stakes are high. The hate is high. The matchup is fantastic. I out of all, like non-con has been kind of for a lot of it. Like Vegas was great with like the our little mini final, our mini final 3 in Duke, and like that was really fun. and like I had a really great time watching those games. But I think out of all the non-con games, this is the one that like leading up to, I am most excited to see what we leave with in terms of like how we think about these teams. I'm stoked.
You know, I think the thing that I'm really interested in is you mentioned this, that Audi has not seen a real dominant, like big or front court matchup yet. Like this is the first kind of power matchup. You've watched a lot of Big 12 basketball over the last few years. You've watched a lot of Audi Crooks over the last few years. And the thing that I keep taking away when I see her is anytime she has a dominant big, but also a really good help defender on her where they have the ability to collapse too when she's in the paint, those are the games where she struggles. Great. And you know, I'm waiting to see, and I was waiting for it last year, the evolution of her game that allows that to not be the thing that wipes her off the board completely. Are there any like things that you're looking for within her game that like if you start to see that like Hayden Stokey collapse, like how she moves or what she does, that will tell you, oh, the evolution of the game. Yeah, like we've taken that level up for Audi Crooks.
Yeah, I think to me it's just kind of like a level of like fluidity almost, and like comfortability of like passing out of those, because you're exactly like Iowa is a team like that is, especially compared to who Iowa State has played so far. I think it's only one Power 4 opponent in Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Like this is for sure going to be like the matchup that can exploit that. And so that's where I'm also really intrigued about Iowa State and how they're made up as a team, because again, you don't really have like obviously Jada Williams comes in and has been productive, but is not a 3-point shooter. That's not her game, right? Addie Brown is a good 3-point shooter, but doesn't shoot at a very high volume. So in terms of trying to figure out how you build this out, it's part like, how do we get Audi to feel comfortable? Like if you're looking from an Iowa State perspective, it's like just on an individual basis, having her feel more comfortable. And frankly, I think that's kind of something you learn over time and by reps. And I'm excited to see for kind of the first test this season if we've grown in that manner with Audi. And I'm also worried though in terms of the team makeup of how comfortable are the outside players to even be able to be available for those things. And that's why I think in this matchup in particular, Addie Brown is so important, who's always important for this Iowa State team, a potential triple-double on any given night. But again, is a capable 3-point shooter. She's shooting 44% on like 2 attempts or so a game. If you get 4 or 5 attempts, and you're knocking those down, and you have to genuinely treat this Iowa State 3-point shooting as a real threat, and Addie Brown gets going. That's where I'm kind of looking at. And to me, it's those two things kind of stem together of like, if Addie Brown is hitting, or if they're really any player, frankly, that can just force Iowa to truly respect whoever Audi is passing out to, that is going to help Audi in terms of her comfortability and what that on an individual level with that.
I think Jada's the X factor here. Like, you're going to need the Jada that showed up against Indiana, the 23 points and 11 assists on 8 of 13 shooting. And that game was a track meet. That to me is where Jada really shines, is in transition. I think where she, as a guard and a point guard in particular, runs into some trouble is when teams like try to slop it up and make her play in the half court. And she's athletic enough that I think she'll be able to hang with Chit Chat Wright and McCabe and a couple of the other backcourt players for Iowa. But it feels like this to me, and I said this on the Ringer WNBA show with Sarah Tsoe, like, it is one of those games where Jada Williams has been talking that cash shit all summer and talk cash shit with us. That was the confidence. She feels rejuvenated. She feels ready to show the world. And I think Indiana was really the first opportunity for her to do that. This is the game where if Jada pops off, overtime is going to pull her right back in.
We're
like
back. We're right back with the motion. We're right back with the motion.
They are going to. Like,
you got a fan base. You got like a history of motion. One game and you're good. Like we're having. I mean, it kind of goes for both teams in a way. Like, I don't know if in terms of like the star power, like for Iowa in that way, like with Jada, because Jada is kind of stamped already, like with like the social media accounts and everything. But in terms of like the way we talk about either of these teams is going to change massively based on however this game turns out. And obviously, I mean, both these teams are going to have other ranked teams that they're going to play, whether it be in conference or not like this. There's other big time match. I mean, Iowa has UConn on the schedule. So like, they're going to have a crack at, really trying to make a statement. But I think you're going to leave this game with completely different just opinions on either of these teams. And one, it could be both good. It could be both bad. Like, I don't know. And that's what makes this game so exciting, is that it has everything to me that I need to be excited about a basketball game. Just I'm so locked in for it.
I have to look this up real quick. Hang on. I have to look at Jada Williams's height. Okay. This might be, and I think I'm comfortable saying this might be a matchup of the shortest power 4 guards in the country, with 5'8" Jada Williams and 5'4" Chit Chat Wright. Like, that's got to be that, like, in an era when the ask is to have your point guards even be longer, lankier, more taller.
The USC mold.
Yeah,
exactly. Every player on USC right now, essentially.
Every player is triple threat.
Jazzy, Juju, Kennedy, all of them. Yeah.
This is like kind of a fun like Hooper's throwback.
Dude, as if you needed to sell me more on this game. I didn't even catch that yet. Oh my goodness.
Got a Hooper's throwback and Audie Crooks versus Hannah Stokes.
We'll be live after this one.
It's gonna be a banger. This is gonna be a banger.
We'll be live after this one. I'm stoked for this one. This is gonna be awesome.
This will be fun. Wednesday night on ESPN. In addition to that, we have some good matchups on the schedule for the real like ball knower sickos. Columbia and Seton Hall played a hell of a game tonight. Columbia ended up winning that one by 1. We got some really interesting upsets in the last week as well, Tyler. I'm curious if any caught your eye as just the result, or any individual teams that you kind of walked away being like, may give them a little bit more of an eye this year.
Well, this isn't really for like the team that did the upsetting. But the Kansas State beating Ole Miss is certainly the one that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like, not honestly, like, I'm still like, my expectations don't really change for Kansas State off this game. And you're 6-5. Like I don't feel like that's gonna shift a ton. It's more so for Ole Miss where I'm like, oh, like we don't want that, do we? Especially after coming off a good win in the ACC SEC Challenge against Notre Dame. Like, there's not a ton of you can't have like your wheels spin in the non-con if you're in the SEC, especially if you're Ole Miss and like you want to keep that momentum going. And this is an Ole Miss team that, I mean, in theory, this is exactly what you've been waiting for at Ole Miss in terms of getting Cody McMahon and having like a genuine like number 1 option that can go and score you 20 points a game and can go and still fit the mold and the character of like what Coach Yo has been able to do at Ole Miss, while still being able to go and be the scorer and not kind of be a bit redundant on the roster that has kind of felt at times with Ole Miss over the past couple of years through the transfer portal. And you in this game, like, you shoot 17% from three, you shoot 5 of 30 from three. Not ideal, right? I'm just not ideal. You have Cody shooting 0 of 6 from three. Like that's not what I want Cody there to do, to be frank. Like when you're just kind of looking, even if you're just looking at the box score, like, it's just not the recipe that I want to see for Ole Miss to succeed. And I don't think this is how they're going to succeed. And so I think in my head, in terms of like where Ole Miss stands for this, because again, that's frankly more my takeaway from this game. It's like, okay, this is what we don't want to do. And frankly, like, this is what happens when we try and do that is if we get stuck shooting the three, not ideal. I don't like that for Ole Miss. So I whether it be Cody or Iguala or Caitlin Peterson, who I thought was a great pickup for them in the transfer portal, like, there's players that can go and score in a way that Ole Miss hasn't had, frankly, like, just in their time in the SEC recently with Coach Yo. So in theory, this is like the Ole Miss team that like makes sense to like really truly go and potentially try and shake some things up at the top of the SEC. These are games you can't drop if you're trying to prove that to me. And that's where I think my biggest worry is for this, where it's like, prove to me you're not the same Ole Miss. And this isn't doing that for me at all.
Yeah, that's solid. I mean, it's one of those things, and people are always like, "Oh, it's really early in the year." It's like, yeah, well, what the hell else are we supposed to talk about? There's games happening on the floor.
It counts. It's in the same column as it's gonna be in February. Like, I mean, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, if you lose these games, you lose these games. And Kansas State, all due respect, they are in a complete rebuild this year. Like, they are 6-5
to the studs rebuild.
Like, I mean, goodness gracious. Like, there's just, come on, like, you can't find an excuse for me on this one, frankly.
No, I think that's totally reasonable, and yeah, definitely in the monitoring stage with Ole Miss, just because, like you said, as easily as I could see them make an Elite Eight run this year, I could also see them get bounced early. You know, like they have that interesting type of variance with them. There were a couple G5s or mid-majors, I guess, upsets that I was really surprised by. Howard beating Fairfield 72-69. Not only was a huge win for Howard and for the MEAC, the balance of power in HBCU women's basketball has kind of jumped around in recent years. It was Jackson State for a few years before Tamika Reed ended up going to Charlotte. For the last couple of years, Larry Vickers built up Norfolk State into a contender and took the job at Auburn. And Howard has always kind of been in the background of the last couple of years in the MEAC. And this feels like their first real big win in the last 2 seasons, and doing it over a Fairfield team that's still really good, still probably going to win the MAAC. Surprised me a little bit in the non-con so far. I thought maybe 1 or 2 of the games that they drop would be wins, including this one. But the fact that you end up with that win, it's going to age really well when we get to the inevitable discussion of HBCUs being downgraded by the committee. Wins like this are huge. Huge for getting HBCUs off the 15 and 16 seed line. And this is one of those games that I think if Howard continues to play and they run through the MEAC and finish the year 26-5, this is one of the games that I think you'll be able to point to and say, that's why they should be a 14 or a 13 seed, depending on how they do. The other surprises, man, Wisconsin beats Michigan State.
Dude, yeah, I don't know what to do with that one. I mean, the Big Ten might just be brutal this year. It's a conversation for another day, but looking at the depth between the Big Ten versus the SEC, like, I don't know what to take away from this game in terms of, like, is this Michigan State like me feeling bad, or is this like me feeling better about like the depth of the Big Ten as a whole? I don't really know yet, frankly. Like, this is like hindsight will tell me kind of how I want to feel about this game. But yeah, I mean, an absolute unexpected one.
It's interesting because when you actually look at Wisconsin this season, 3-point loss on the road to Marquette, 9-point loss to Ole Miss, which fair loss. The only real head scratcher was the game before this, where James Madison came to town and basically ran him out of the gym 69-50. It was the Daytona Beach Classic instead of up in Madison. But I walked away very impressed by Wisconsin, considering I didn't have much of a thought about them at all this year. They spread the ball around. They spread around the scoring. They held Michigan State's a 5 of 22 from 3 to 38% from the field. Also a really bad shooting night for the Spartans at the line, 11 of 18 from the stripe and 11 turnovers, which was around the same level. But Gift Uchenna Okeke with 7 blocks in this game.
Hell yeah.
Like 14, 11, or 14, 15, and 7 is just like a preposterous line. But between Robin Pinkton, who was fired in Missouri and then took a job that seemingly nobody wanted to take in Wisconsin, and Kelly Harper replacing Pinkton at Missouri. Missouri's 9-2 now. And their first real game this week is in the watch guide, which you can find on nocapspacewbb.com. Their first real test. They beat Cal in the ACC SEC Challenge, and now they go out and they see an 8-1 Illinois team, which I think is kind of a real matchup of bubble teams. It's kind of an interesting thing about, it opens up an interesting discussion about fit for coaches, and what is and isn't good and what works and doesn't for programs and what their expectations are. Wisconsin had to get rid of Marissa Mosley, like that point blank period, right? Yep. Like the returns were bad. There were reports of bad locker room culture in there. Sarah Williams transferred out at the end of the year. Part of that, I think, had to do with Marissa being let go. She was former UConn coach. And yet you bring in what a lot of people thought was just like a garbage retread. And especially after you miss out on Kayla Carius, who is the in-state coach at Green Bay, which is a Horizon League team. And she said no to a jump to the Big Ten. Like that to me, that was like, oh, this team's going to be like 2-27 forever. To get a coach like Pinkton, like, yeah, man, you may go 14-18, or you may go 18-14, and maybe one year you make the tournament. But to your point about developing and creating depth within the Big Ten, you need coaches like that.
Sure.
You do. And Missouri, I think, had reached the limit of how good she was. And Kelly Harper, for whatever people want to say about her time at Tennessee, Kelly Harper's best years were just down the road at Missouri State. She knows the stage. She knows the people. The culture is good. Tennessee's expectations are extremely high. And I don't think she was ever really the person from like a disposition and demeanor standpoint to be able to deal with and handle it that way. I mean, even Kim Caldwell is having a trial by fire this year in that respect. But it feels like she's settled into what feels a little more like home for her. And so it is an interesting topic of conversation about what schools should be valuing. And to your point, the Big Ten, it's kind of like it is in football this year, where like the SEC is the deeper league. The Big Ten has the championship pedigree at the top, but is it, what does it say about the league if you have one really elite contender, a few decent teams, and then a whole lot of mid underneath versus the SEC, which has a title contender, maybe even 2 title contenders, depending on how healthy South Carolina.
Baby.
We'll get to that. But there's like a lot of depth underneath. Like it's going to be really interesting to see how the jobs go for both of them. But I came away really impressed with the fact that Wisconsin was able to do that. And conference win or conference loss, obviously that hurts Michigan State in the net, and it's going to hurt in the resume in the long term. However, if you have teams, I used to make this argument for the Pac-12 all the time. I don't need you to be good in conference play. I just need you to not kill the conference's net in non-con. And by winning a game like this, Michigan State has been doing what they've needed to do. So getting this one little boost to Wisconsin's net early is actually a net good for the conference. And I think that's an important thing here, and why this win in particular, I think, matters a lot.
Yeah, no, it'll be something to monitor. I guess I think it's pretty clear. Like the Big 12 and ACC are not in that tier with the SEC and Big 10. I think that's very clear already. Yeah. And so I'll be interested to see like how that continues to develop, especially like if you kind of get these early returns of a couple conference games here and there. Like I'm intrigued by what this was, and what this means going forward for just, again, the depth of the Big 10 is really what I'm interested in kind of looking at.
Yeah. So you got a little eager with me, but I want to go and circle back on your Oklahoma Sooners, and nobody has been boots. Nobody's been boots in Norman like No Cap Space. and nobody has been following the Chavez Mafia like you, Tyler DeLuca. I wrote this week in 5 Out about the nexus between Aaliyah Chavez, Gabby Jaquez, Fernando Mendoza, Diego Pavia, and this new demographic that of Hispanic superstar athlete. And, you know, we have seen Hispanic athletes in the past go on and become superstars in their sport. Diana Taurasi is the notable example in women's basketball. Argentinian parents, and was raised Argentinian American, lived in California. Rebecca Lobo was half Cuban father, Irish German mother. And yet, I think that for a group that has always been historically underrepresented, the last statistics were Hispanic American women constituted 2.7% of all Division I women's college basketball players. Here we are with a Mexican American freshman that was the #1 player in the country that is now on a top 10 team that just dropped her first 30 ball in the last couple weeks against NC State. Is the motion real here? And have you seen, and I guess this is maybe like a more deeper and loaded question, like, have you seen the cultural phenomenon of this, or is this still just restricted to the basketball and like the overtime online motion right now?
There's two things when you ask me that question. There's two things that immediately come to mind and what I've seen being boots on the ground. One is that the NC State game was the loudest I've heard Lloyd Noble for like a non-OU Texas game, maybe ever. Like, in my times of covering, since we'll say since Jenny got there 5 years ago. Like OU Texas always reigns supreme. Maybe something like the OU Baylor games in Big 12, but for like a non-con game like that, it was loud. Like when it got down to the wire in that game, it was loud in there. The student section, like again, if we're throwing out the OU Texas games, which are always just kind of bring a crowd here in Norman, it was they were filling it up. It's like it's like I'm just noticing. I'm like, and we'll see as we get into conference play that I think it's hard to say right now because once we get into SEC play, LSU's coming to town, South Carolina's coming to town, Tennessee's coming to town. We haven't had those type of games in Norman. Like even like when you look at since Jenny's gotten here, and even the last couple of years in the Big 12, OU was at the top. Like they were it was them in Texas and Baylor was factored in there. Iowa State a little bit too. There's a level of motion that LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee's like those type of teams provide that just doesn't exist right now in the Big 12. And I will be incredibly, incredibly intrigued by the turnout to those games, how that looks. And I think that's going to be a very big barometer. I'll tell you the other thing that comes to mind. And I'm so sick I didn't get this on video when I saw it. But it was a while ago now, a couple weeks ago. It was a kids camp game. And every time when the buzzer sounds, and this is OU had won comfortably and everything, and the kids are still in the seats and all that, they're waiting for the buses to be called. And every time I go to cover a game, I always stand by the tunnel as the players walk up, and I'll stand by the court. You know, we'll just kind of observing. And I don't know if I've ever seen this in particular at an OU game in specific here. One of the kids was like hanging over the tunnel and just screaming Aaliyah's name. Wow. This little boy screaming Aaliyah's name. And I don't even think Aaliyah like truly noticed. And one of her teammates taps her and goes like, Aaliyah, go. And like, he's just on the corner there. And Aaliyah happily goes over, signs, keeps it pushing, and all the kids around go crazy. Wow. And I'm like, oh, I'll tell you the other player I've noticed that with. Pac-12 tournament, Juju Watkins. Yeah. That was the other one where I was like, oh, wow, this feels, that's interesting. Like this kid is calling her by name. Like there's it's not just, oh, hey, over here, just being a little kid. It's Aaliyah. I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. And so I think it's truly one thing that, like, especially with women's sports at Norman, you look at women's gymnastics, multiple time national champions, back to back, all that. OU softball, dominant.
Patty Gasso, yeah.
I mean, like to a degree where those women's gymnastics meets, I was season ticket holder. I've been there. Packed. Softball, it's a lottery. Like you got to try and get in. They just built a new stadium. More than anything, I think it's going to respond to winning. And if you go and beat LSU or you go and beat South Carolina, Oklahoma fans respect winning, and that has been shown with the women's sports at the university. And so I do think in terms of it being a larger like momentum, to me in my eyes, the way I would imagine this playing out. If I was to kind of like PEMDAS this and maybe kind of mark out the points, I would imagine in my head, we're seeing natural growth in terms of more people showing up. It felt like it against NC State, surely. You go and get one of those SEC wins with those people, assuming that the crowd is going to be more than as well. Those people are going to come back. And then I think, because I'll tell you right now, Aaliyah Chavez, if you watch her ball once, you're going to want to see her play again. I promise you that. Mm-hmm. That's when I think after that, once there's like a foundational like growth in OU's audience, that's when I'm going to be very interested in the cultural large scale impact. Because I think you're going to see the overtime clips and the highlights and posting on social media. Hell, I'm the one doing it a lot of the time. I think that is going to be there. But in terms of the cultural impact, I think it's going to take, it might just be one win. It might just be one of those games in mid-January, LSU or South Carolina. And if there's a bit of an arrival there to that scale on that national level where you simply cannot ignore what Aaliyah Chavez did on that night, that'll be the night that changes everything. But to say now and what we're looking at, absolutely, there's already been noticeable growth and moments where, as someone who has been here covering, like my first year covering full time was Jenny's first year. I've seen this entire era, and I'd been going to games forever before then with Sherry Cole. Like that was a noticeable thing on both with the kids game and with NC State. So it's a work in progress, but progress certainly being made, I feel like.
It's kind of remarkable how one player does that, you know?
Crazy.
I remember when I was in Oregon and I was covering Oregon and Oregon State, my time there coincided with Sabrina. And to watch over the course of the first 3 years, you know, even before 2020 hit, leading up to the 19 Final Four, their first ever as a program, each season, you saw it grow and grow and grow. And to me, the climax of that was Team USA comes out to play a tune-up at Oregon, and Oregon wins, and Sabrina hits the 30-footer. I think it was over DT, and like it's, you know, there's like 15,000 people in Matthew Knight Arena. It is really fascinating to watch that when it builds out. The representation thing I think is really interesting because typically, you know, and I won't paint too much with a broad brush, but going off of the public comments of a guy like a Fernando Mendoza or a Pavia or even an Aaliyah Chavez or even a Hannah Hidalgo, you know, the concept of representation is important, but it is not overly intertwined with their identity. And, you know, Hannah, you know, in the documentary, the docuseries that followed her and her family around, you know, there's that interesting clip of her at the table in the restaurant with her family. And she's asking about, you know, the fact that, you know, her family doesn't know Spanish or speak Spanish in the house. And, you know, Papa Hidalgo is kind of like, yeah, it just was not part of like what culture was to us, which is, as an Italian American, that's like a third generation down. That's a very Northeast thing. Like when, you know, when grandparents immigrated, like it was assimilation and, you know, you weren't asked to speak your native tongue in the house. I'm interested in how that dichotomy plays out in a league and in a sport where intersectionality is something that is so prized, right? And you hear even someone like Natalie Nakase, like ignoring the Asia Wilson of it all, and the Nafisa Collier and the various Black women that have helped build women's basketball that, you know, carry representation as a very core part of their identity as women's athletes. You know, you end up with Asian players, Asian American players like Caitlin Chen, Asian American coaches like Natalie Nakase, who go out of the way to say, like, I'm doing this so people can see me. You know, when we had Caitlin Chen on our show last year when she was at UConn, we asked her this question. She talked about its importance. But when you interview, you know, when Pavia and Mendoza and some of these other guys have been asked about it, they're like, I don't see it with that degree of importance. And part of that, I feel, is a cultural thing inherent to, you know, specific experiences within different groups in this country, never mind what's happening on the broader scale, but we don't need to get into that right now. I am interested to see who among this cohort, whether it's Jaquez, Hidalgo, Chavez, even Camila Cardoso being Brazilian, playing out of South America, like who among this cohort of players that clearly seem to signal a larger movement opts to pick up the Trailblazer torch? And if the Trailblazer torch is even picked up, I think that's something that I'm really fascinated about. And I know a lot of people are probably going to hear this and be like, why are you even bringing this up within the sport? The reason I bring this up is not to not make it a meta commentary about race or ethnicity, but more about the fact that what we're watching right now is a raising of the percentage of elite athletes from this group. And that this is a group that we have typically in American sports always associated with soccer. Sure. You know, it's like, if Hispanic American athletes are soccer players. That's it. They play men's soccer, they play women's soccer. You know, they watch MLS, they watch Liga MX, they watch Univision and Telemundo, and that's it. Instead, what we're starting to see is more of them that are playing football, more in the world of basketball, more in the world of women's basketball, and how that kind of new aspect of representation builds and how leagues respond to that as well. You know, how sports choose to position these athletes is another thing that is interesting, you know, for me as someone who is really fascinated by the broader cultural shifts that happen within sports and how they relate to the sports that are played. Speaking of cultural shifts, because I think how people responded to this particular event last week has a lot to do with what your culture is about or where you're from or what you value.
All right, let me lock in.
Flau'Jae Johnson versus Kara Lawson.
Because, man, good. There's been a lot of discourse this week. Good. Welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I got to go away more often, come back after my little 2-week vacation, find out we got a content mine in front of us.
Yes.
For those of you that are unaware of the backstory here, Flau'Jae Johnson played with Team USA at the FIBA AmeriCup over the summer. Kara Lawson was the head coach of that team. Flau'Jae was not too pleased with the minutes that she received in that tournament. It was documented in her mini-series that has followed her around through this offseason. And during the Duke LSU game, with the game well in hand, Flau'Jae had some choice words for Kara in the middle of the game. She later walked back some of that in after the game was over on Twitter, saying she had great respect for Coach Lawson, great respect for her experience with Team USA. She actually confirmed that in an interview with Yahoo Sports this week, saying that, you know, it was about the things that she taught me, and I'm totally appreciative of her and what she's done. But of course, the linchpin of all of this, who else but Kim Mulkey, who went into the post-game press conference and basically said that Flau'Jae lost her confidence at the hands of Kara Lawson and kicked off the whole thing. Are you Team Flau'Jae? Are you Team Kara? Or are you the wild card? Team Kim Mulkey.
I can tell you right now, I'm not Team Kim Mulkey. You know what? I kind of am. Hold on. Because you know what? Did it work out in her favor? No. But I do respect just how much of a match made in heaven Flau'Jae and Kim Mulkey are. They are on 10, on 20, and 30 at the same time, all the time. And I adore that, honestly. Like, I really, really do. Like, the clip of Flau'Jae talking to Kara, and you just see her talking to Kara, and Kim's right there just already talking to gassing Flau'Jae up. I'm like, in my veins. I love it. I'm not going to lie. Here's the thing. I have a couple of feelings on this. And one is Flau'Jae did nothing wrong. Let me put that out there right now. Flau'Jae did nothing wrong. I don't care. I don't like if she doesn't like Kara, cool. Okay. Like what's the big deal? And I actually think, to me, in my eyes, this wasn't the Olympics. This is America. And don't get me wrong, America is very, very important. I'm not doing that to say like it's not as important or anything of that nature. There's not seniority here. This isn't the Olympics where you have Asia and Stewie and like, hey, if you don't get minutes behind them, I understand. Or DT in the past. These are her peers through and through.
Yes.
I would feel disrespected too, just from a competitive standpoint, which Flau'Jae has always had that edge, and has also notably, I think there's a line, right? You could be competitive, you could talk trash, or you could be a crash out. I don't think she's ever fallen into the crash out territory by any means.
Her brother has, but I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I'm not cutting that.
Yeah, don't. Good, lovely. But yeah, no, to me, she's allowed to be upset. She doesn't have to like it. And if it ends up being where Kara like decides that she leaves her off Team USA in the future, I mean, like, I still don't think Flau'Jae did anything wrong. Like, here's the thing. We have seen so many things with Team USA and the amount of personalities that come into that and everything. And we know from past that Flau'Jae can play with other star players. It's nothing like that in any type of way where it's like she wants the show to be hers. It's not like, I don't care. Like, and I frankly, like, I can't believe that this, like, when I saw this happen, I was watching this live and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And that was it. Like, there was no like further breaking this down for me at all. And I was frankly a bit shocked that this even turned into like this, like, oh, she shouldn't do that. Like, that's disrespectful. That's like, you're going to ruin your chances with Team USA. If she's good enough to be on Team USA, she's going to be on Team USA, point blank, period. I don't have any, like, there's not going to be anything like that. This is who Flau'Jae is. Since after all these years, after everything that makes her what she is on and off the court, now is the time that you're gonna try and like water this down? Absolutely not. I spit at that thought. Like, that is awful to me, to think that this is who she is. This is what makes her so much fun to watch. I have zero issue with it, and I can't believe, like so many things in this space, I can't believe that this turned into an actual discourse.
There are a lot of things you can find morally objectionable about Kim Mulkey in a variety of ways, right? Like the COVID mask thing, taking a team of Black women athletes to angle a prison, saying
like a Mad Lib,
saying that anybody that, you know, has an issue with Art Briles should be punched in the face. Like, there's a laundry list of things that, you know, my morals say they are objectionable and I do not agree with. On the basketball court, there is something strange about the NIL era unlocking Kim Mulkey's ability to stand behind a group of very passionate, unapologetic, and outspoken Black women college players. I think it is not a coincidence that the two players that vibe the most with Kim have been Angel Reese and Flau'Jae Johnson.
I agree.
And to me, like, that's part of the complexity of Kim Mulkey, is that, like, you know, I think some of the discourse around Flau'Jae in particular is actually displacement of how people want to talk about Mulkey, because I can understand the idea of Kim can go out into a post-game press conference and say that, and she won't have to deal with any consequences because she's Kim Mulkey. Like, she's, you know, the resume is stamped and she's going to do what she wants regardless.
100%.
You know, and so it's like, you'll walk away from this unscathed, but what did you just potentially expose a player you care about to, right? I get that. I understand 100%. That concern that fans might have. Do I find it a little bit patronizing and paternalistic? A bit. But I think in the same way that I feel that, you know, Kim's going to do that, Flau'Jae Johnson's, you know, what, 20, 21 years old? Like, I too, and I said this, you know, on the Ringer show, like, I too would be pissed if I felt I did everything I possibly could to earn minutes and I didn't. We all face this, man. Everybody in their life, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, everyone faces it at some point in life that you feel you did every single thing right and you were not rewarded. And 9 times out of 10, whether you do it publicly, personally, or otherwise, your ass is probably going to crash out over that, because the world ain't fair. And sometimes it's not fair. And while we can sit on the sidelines sometimes and be like, yeah, like, unfair world, cold world, cruel world, you know, learn to deal with it. Like, all of us should be able and self-aware enough to look in the mirror and be like, that's how we want ourselves to be and how we want ourselves to move, is to just, like, have the rationalization that, like, this is just the way shit is sometimes. But when it comes to our doorstep, we're pissed. And I don't blame her for that. Now, past that, I heard absolutely nothing from everybody that was involved in the AmeriCup. I'm not going to say every single person I talked to, but the people that I've talked to that were in Chile, nobody said that she was a problem in that locker room. That's the shit that'll cost you Team USA caps in the 100%. Future.
That's a completely different thing.
Yes, if you're mad and you make it a problem while you are there on the floor, that is one thing. But if you're, like, mad behind closed doors and then a little bit later, you know, you bring up an issue with it, like, that's very different. This is not Becky Hammon crashing out so hard that she one time switched to the Russian national team and will never be involved with USA basketball ever again. This is not Candace Parker being left off the Olympic roster in 12. This is not Caitlin Clark being left off the Olympic roster in 24. It just is not those things. And I feel like what people are doing is saying, well, Team USA is insular, and if she does anything to prompt that, they will treat Flau'Jae the way they treat her or have treated people like that in the past.
Sure.
I don't think we're there, because your point is well taken. This is not the Olympics. This is the AmeriCup, which is always the first senior team set of caps for college players. This is the college player tournament because it occurs every 2 years during the WNBA season, and the senior national team doesn't go. And your point that I hadn't even considered, but it is bang on the money. These are contemporaries. This is not a type of this isn't an earn your keep thing. Not to mention, if you really want to take it a step further, like if this was a seniority thing, Flau'Jae's the senior member among the group with Olivia Miles there, like technically she would have the seniority.
Was getting most of the minutes over Flau'Jae, who completely earned, and no issue, like Blake's is crazy. It's nothing against her, but
if this was a seniority thing, it would actually trend toward her anyway. 100%. So it just, as for the Kara Lawson of it all, I think this is Kara's just getting caught at a bad time for this. Yeah. If this was like 9-1 Duke,
100%,
and the Aaliyah Chavez comments didn't happen, where there were like allusions to losing confidence.
A horrible time to take belt to ass from your biggest op. Just what a perfect opportunity for Big Four to come out there and just absolutely stunt. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like I wouldn't have done the same thing. Like, she was hooping, Duke was getting belt put to him after they'd already came back. Keep in mind, LSU was down by like 14 in that first quarter. LSU comes all the way back, Evan just puts belt. I'm doing the same thing. Maybe I'm not mature enough either, but I'm doing the same thing.
Well, and this is where I think we'll leave the show. Flau'Jae Johnson did the textbook definition of ethical hate.
100%.
Like, hate between the lines. I'm gonna snatch your chain. I'm gonna put belt to ass, and I'm gonna let you know in your house, and I'm gonna have a reason for it, and I'm gonna let everyone know exactly what the reason is, so you can decide up front whether you think it's valid or not. But I'm not gonna take it outside the lines of the floor. And when we get past the floor, and the next day comes, whether people agree with the walk back or not, her making the choice to have the tweet and say it's nothing but love, Kara Lawson. To me, like, that's the ethical nature of this. Yeah. And I want us to have more of that, to bring it all the way back to center from the beginning of the conversation we had. Like, the A'ja Caitlyn juxtaposition and the rivalry that the fan bases have with each other is unethical. It's unethical hate. And while there are aspects of both fan bases, I would say, that have that discuss things and bring up portions of stuff that trends into the bad faith, if not outright and completely racist, then we end up in a position where, like, we're having to be the people to take 15 minutes to take the temperature down. Whereas, like, the Flau'Jae versus Kara thing is fun because we just get to talk about how, like, fun and low impact it is. It's ultimately low impact, and we should want low impact. Yes,
we should be motivating these things. Like, this is the exact type of hate, as you mentioned. This is ethical hating. This is what our hater in chief Shawnee has been campaigning for. This is through and through basketball beef, and like that, especially like in women's basketball, where like like the emotions of the players and everything gets so policed, like even within the lines, like with the referees and everything. Like, I'm not gonna be the one that wants to do that outside of here. Like I want them to just be able to go and show emotions and be competitive and go and do it in a fun way, where ultimately, who got hurt from this? Not Nobody. A soul.
And this
Not
is
a soul.
And you know what this is? This is the type of shit that people said NIL was going to take away, was the passion of college basketball. This is what college basketball is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
This is what it's supposed to be. I want to see players and coaches going back and forth and doing this. Like, I do think, as I, feel sometimes with A'ja in particular, as I mentioned off rip, like people like Dawn and Gino, for instance, who kind of straddle the line of like petty, rub your face in it, but also have the ambassadorship of the game. Like, I think there are lines to how far your pettiness can go when you're supposed to be one of the people at the top of the pantheon that is supposed to be our thought leader in this space and you know, push people in a healthy direction for the game. But I also kind of like it sometimes when Gino's got some shit to say. And I also sometimes kind of like it when Don gets on Twitter and has some shit to say. So like we, you know, I think we can, you know, talk about where the lines go, but I think the issue that I have is I don't want people to think that because there are lines, it means you can't do it at all. You know, this doesn't have to be either we don't do any of this or we open it up to the worst offenders.
Yeah.
There's a place right in the sweet spot, and that spot is no cap space. Tyler, any final thoughts before Ball Up Top wraps up?
No, be ready. We'll be live. If you're watching this on the day of, if you're tapped in like you're supposed to be, subscribed and everything, we'll be live. Iowa State. There'll be a post game, so I'm locked in for that game. And then we'll have some boots on the ground later this week. I think with UConn USC, right? Is this weekend?
Yep.
We'll have boots on the ground there as well. So we'll have some reports. I'm sure we'll be live after that one as well. So just making sure you're tapped in. We're starting to kind of really ramp up into some games. I'll have boots on the ground as well with Bedlam and OKC, another in-state rivalry with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So we got ethical hate to go all around this week. So this is a good little appetizer. Make sure you're tapped in here for the lives and everything so we can break it all down.
Cyhawk game, 7 o'clock Eastern time, ESPN, and come find us immediately after here on YouTube. No cap space WBB. If you've been listening this long, thank you so much for joining us. This has been Ball Up Top by No Cap Space, and we will see you this time next week.